Jarod Latch, our next guest speaker, and his co-founder leveraged this approach for their video production firm called Spherical Media. Their MVP was a service that provided communications and storytelling for athletes, but they pivoted with the aim of helping small and medium-sized businesses who they knew would inevitably need video storytelling to engage their own customers. Jarod, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here.
So I'd like to ask you about the very early stages of marketing and business development for Spherical Media. At the beginning, it sounded like you offered all sorts of communication and storytelling services. And you went to a lot of your friends and family members and you said, hey, do you need our services? So how was that both effective and ineffective?
Well, I think there's both sides of the coin for us for sure. And when you start a business and you're excited about it, you want to tell people about it. So it was a natural impulse and sort of that grassroots aspect of starting a business and trying to just let everybody know about it. And we had a lot of connections, thankfully, because of our prior life in TV. And so within the area in Charlotte where we were and still are, we wanted to go to these people and see if they needed us. And again, just to tell them what we were doing and the services we were offering. And it was effective on the front end of it because we secured some of our biggest deals at the time. We got a significant retainer with a series of restaurants or franchises. And that was important for us because in the early phases of a startup, buying time is important. And if you can get a retainer with consistent money coming in, that's as important. Yes. We also locked in a couple of other opportunities with some athletes, and we were working with athletes in our previous careers. And so we worked with Steph Curry because we had this connection to Davidson and Ricky Barons, who was an Olympic swimmer, handling their social media. So that was the effective part of it. But as I look back now 11 years later, I realized that it wasn't as effective as it could have been. And the reason why is that we hadn't truly defined who our market segment was, who was our audience, what was really going to serve as a catalyst so that we were sustainable down the line. Because as you said, we were doing a lot of different things and we were trying to be too much or everything to all people. And I think that's one of the critical errors that can happen early on is that you feel like you have to be everything. And you can't. It's not possible unless you have this seed funding or an abundance of resources and people to make it happen. So we were trying to be the website designer, SEO, video production, social media. So that was the ineffective part of it. Yes, it was effective because we got the word out. I don't want to discount that and say that you shouldn't do it because I think it's really important to get the word out overall. But then secondarily, really defining who that audience is, what is going to be sustainable, who is your buyer, all those exercises are important.
So once you determined who really was in your sweet spot, how did you go out and find more of them?
That's always a challenge. There's a reinvention part of being a business owner, and you have to continually do that. Early on, we defined that we needed people that were serious about video, that believed in storytelling, that had certain levels of people that were working within marketing departments. That has changed as we've evolved as a company. So those things have gotten bigger. Our targets have gotten larger. Now it's Fortune 1000 companies. It is digging into those companies and figuring things out in terms of how different segments of people within those organizations behave. So not to get too technical, but the psychographics behind communication departments, as an example for us, is really important.
So in those early stages of a startup, there's so much to do, but with the business development and acquiring customers being so important, how did you decide, do you delegate that responsibility or did you and your co-founder work on that yourselves?
We actually both worked on it together. And I think the thing is when you're in a startup environment and you have limited resources in terms of people, you do the thing where you're just putting on all these different hats all the time. I'd love to say that that's done now at this point in the game, but it's not. But we did realize probably 3 or 4 years in that we were going to have to define our roles and that we were going to have to decide who was going to focus on the business development. And that was my business partner, Tim. And we said, okay, run with this. Let's look at what your gifts are, where you're very good at, and that's being in the big conversations. It's talking to people. Not that I couldn't do that, but I was best served still being in the creative and then eventually on the operations side. So we did realize that we both couldn't be doing the same things over and over again. And I'd say that's something that you continue to perfect and you try to figure out who's in the right seats. And as you add more people, that becomes more imperative.